the best of the rest of the news. When most Americans think of the right-wing war on public education, they probably think of charter schools or school choice. But one of the most effective Republican efforts has actually been the push to destroy our public universities. This campaign, which many Americans probably haven't even heard of, is the subject of a startling new documentary called Starving the Beast. Here's a clip from the trailer.
We starve the government by reducing tax revenue.
They're designing the system to fail. You make sure that a public institution cannot perform its duties, and then you blame it for failing to live up to its goals and performing its duties.
I think we all agree now college costs too much, delivers too little, and it has to change.
Before any of our young people take out student loans, that school has to tell you how much you can expect to make.
We need people who come to the federal government and ask for money to pursue something that has some demand in the economy.
These reformers decided that universities were the problem.
And they say that education is a commodity.
They've started a fervent political campaign under this mistaken guise that students are consumers rather than students and future citizens.
You can commoditize it, you can charge for it. It's just another thing out there. It's a barrel of oil, it's an ounce of gold, it's a stock, it's anything.
Joining me now is the director of Starving the Beast, Steve Mims. Steve, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you with us. So tell us about the film. What's the story you're trying to tell us, and what inspired you to make this movie?
Well, I live in Austin, Texas, and we were following a local story about appointees to the Board of Regents for Texas A&M and for UT Austin. And those appointees were different because they had an agenda from the governor to really change those schools. And so we started documenting that. And in the course of documenting that, we discovered that this is a common story all over the country. So we wound up going to the University of Virginia, to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, to Wisconsin, and to LSU, and an A&M. And we found like common characters, common influences among all those schools that were kind of a surprise to us.
What were the things that you were finding in common?
We're finding that there had been, well, for one thing, there's been this historic 35-year defunding of public higher education from about 1980. And so
this is what Reagan did in California as governor, isn't
right.
it? So then he becomes president and it starts national?
Well, it's part of the Grover Norquist thing. You have all these legislators who sign an oath that they'll never raise taxes. And so that's been going on since 1980 till now. And that has shifted the cost of public higher education away from the states and onto the backs of the students and their families.
Right.
So it took that long to do it. And it led to a big reform movement. And that reform movement, again, we documented it in Texas, but we found it happening in other places as well. And part of our discovery of that was it was built on ideas and concepts that came from think tanks. And so there are think tanks that were involved in coming up with ideas, a different strategy for like how schools should be funded, and the whole...
Conservative think tanks, presumably?
Conservative think tanks.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a big shift. It's a shift from the original idea of public universities, that we would take public money, invest it, and the investment be returned by the people who came out, who would then turn around and make their state great. And that arguably is really true if you look at the great research universities that we have that are the best in the world. And they're so good that people from all over the world pay a premium to send their kids to those schools, like the University of Wisconsin and like UT Austin. But this philosophical shift is one from an investment in the public good to one of a market orientation that says that if you're going to walk out of a school like UT Austin, or let's say UNC Chapel Hill with a degree that has a market value, that you should be prepared to carry the cost of that.
To pay for that,
yes.
Essentially. So when Thomas Jefferson created the University of Virginia, the first free public university in the United States, and he was so proud of that instead of putting President of the United States, he put that on his tombstone.
That's right.
Which he wrote himself. When Abraham Lincoln created 56 land-grant universities across the United States, right. so that the universities could be self-sustaining and right. people could go for free.
Right.
I mean, you're looking at almost a century of time here right. when there was a broad consensus across the United States that education was a public good,
right.
and that we, the people, should pay for the education because that money would come back to us
right.
in the form of additional tax revenue right. from people earning more money and a better country.
Right.
So the ideology of these think tanks, from what I got from your movie, is that education actually isn't a public good. Education is actually a commodity. It's like shoes and soap and beer. And as a commodity, that degree, the commodity, has a specific value. Right. People should pay that value. Right. Do I have this right?
Right. Yes.
This is bizarre. I mean, I can imagine a few academics sitting around going, "Whoa, this isn't a great idea," but it sounds like a stupid idea. How did it get?
I think that
institutionalized.
Right. If you don't believe that government should be spending money in education at all, as is evident, like in some cases in K through 12 as well as in college, then you can look at this historically and say, well, this is maybe a good idea in the beginning. Maybe it was a good idea up through World War II, but now it's a new period. We have all this technology. We can be a lot more efficient about it. And so we can bring all that to bear, and we can save a lot of money. We can make these institutions a lot leaner and a lot more competitive.
But that isn't what happened, is it? I mean, now we've got university presidents who are making $1 million a year. But back in the '60s when I was in college, I don't think the university president literally lived down the street from my girlfriend in what today would probably be a $100,000 house. I mean, he was not rich.
Right. And so, I mean, this is an honest debate. And so what we try to do with the film is like to put the information from both camps in there and let people figure out what they think is appropriate. And so, yeah, there are problems. One of the things that comes up in the film is about academic tenure. Right. And there are people who want to just do away with that. However, the thing to remember about this is a debate that's only happening in publicly funded higher ed. This is not a debate happening in the private universities. And so at the University of Wisconsin, they've essentially taken away tenure. It used to be in statute, in the Constitution, that it was there. They've now made it flexible enough so the Board of Regents can get rid of people that they have a problem with.
Was this Scott Walker's project?
This Scott Walker, right. And so at UNC, we have a great guy in the film, Gene Nickel, who's head of the Southern Poverty Center. And he wrote a lot of columns that were critical of what's happening in North Carolina. And had he not had tenure, they would have fired him. So it's a complex thing. People tend not to like that in the abstract, but you get down to people like Gene Nickel and people who are in Wisconsin, and you can see the value of it. So it's an interesting debate. The film, I think, is really interesting. It's very funny. James Carville is in it, and he's
absolutely brilliant.
He's
absolutely brilliant. Steve, we got to wrap it up.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and thank you particularly for making this brilliant movie. It's really important. Steve's movie